it's too complicated to try to maintain barriers and boundaries. And it's all of a sudden you're in a maze of constructed ideas about how you should be or what you should say and all sorts, instead of just being like, yeah, it was a rough time. I was going through a rough time. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the How to Take Care of Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Veronica Wolff-Casey, and I am absolutely thrilled that you're here. If you are a first-time listener, I want to welcome you to the How to Take Care of Yourself family. What I know about you, because you're listening to this podcast, is that you're absolutely ready, willing, and able to take action to feel better in your body and mind. If you've been here for a while, thank you so much for listening. And no matter who you are, it would really do me a big, huge, solid favor if you could hit subscribe on this channel, wherever you found me, whether you're listening to me or watching me on YouTube. Please hit subscribe and let the algorithms know that you not only like this content, but that you would like to see more of it. My promise to you, if you subscribe, is that I will continue to make the podcast bigger and better and more useful for you. We'll also have bigger guests, like today's guest, who is none other than Anne Curtis. She is a yoga teacher, movement educator, and all-around wise human and a dear friend. Anne's journey with movement started in ballet, where she found both discipline and restriction, and ultimately led her to the world of yoga. In this episode, we talk about self-care as an evolving practice, learning how to listen to your body and why exploration, not perfection, is the real key to feeling good. Anne shares her insights on yoga, meditation, and daily rituals that actually make a difference. If you've ever struggled with body image, felt stuck in a rigid wellness routine, who hasn't, or just need permission to let things get a little messy, then this conversation is for you. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and let's dive in. Hello, Anne. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Veronica. Great to be here.
So good to see you. I was wondering if you could tell our audience a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and how you came to be where you are today.
So I suppose it starts in Cambridge. I was born here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but grew up in Berkeley, California. And I think that probably the journey to self-care started with me starting to dance. I was not a kid who was happy in my body until I learned how to dance, until I started doing ballet. And the interesting thing about that is that by starting to do ballet, I both got into my body and then began to not want to be that body. So it's interesting. Right away, I was 11, so it's pretty big for a young girl to start ballet at that age. But I worked really hard and went to the San Francisco Ballet School and studied really seriously and thought, I want to be a prima ballerina. And then that was really helpful in many ways. It gave me discipline, it gave me structure that wasn't present in my life at that time. It gave me something that was my own, that was unique, and that was just me, that didn't have to do with anyone else in my family, really. I supported myself, I paid for it, I got scholarships and things like that. So it felt very unique and creative in one way. And in another way, as I got older, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, started moving in the direction of, oh, I'm supposed to look a certain way. Your ballet body is supposed to be this. And that became, on the one hand, I still had the freedom and joy of dance, but then there was this other really negative, I would say, influence of sort of societal norms. And then also like the direct legacy of people like Balanchine and others who thought that women's bodies should be skeletal, and especially ballet dancers. And that was really hard because I'm a mesomorph. I'm a medium person. I've always been medium. So I basically was tried to, sort of limit my food, starve myself to be the right kind of body. And, that worked up to a point until it didn't. And then one day, a teacher walked in to a conference and said, "So, Anne, what other interests do you have?" And that was just this crushing, oh my God, I'm not going to be the prima ballerina. It would have been a great opportunity for me to pivot and say, oh, well, I think I'll go into modern dance because I love modern dance. And at the time I loved it and was doing it as well as tap and jazz. But no, there was this sort of feeling that no, if you're going to do it, you have to be either the prima ballerina or you don't do it at all. So there, in a way, that was also very helpful because my life went from this to that. It was a narrowing only dance all the time to, okay, well, since I'm not going to be doing only dance, all dance, now I have other opportunities. So that really was the beginning of my physical practice. And as you can imagine, it was not the beginning of my emotional support and other kinds of, psychological, emotional, spiritual side of things whatsoever. Quite the opposite in some ways. The music, the dance itself, incredible, but all the baggage that came with it was difficult. And I'd say I carried that baggage with me and still carry it, of course. But it was very heavy baggage for a long time. It's subsequently lightened a lot. I feel that it's really gotten a lot lighter with the help of starting yoga. So I'm crawling my way back into my body. My first yoga class was in New York City in 1995. And I was living in New York City, working in a biology lab. And I lived on the 21st floor, and there was a gym on the 25th floor called New York Sports Club. And they had yoga. And my roommate said, why don't we go up and take a yoga class? So I thought, okay, cool. So we took the elevator up and went to this yoga class, and I loved it. I just loved it. And afterwards, the teacher said to me, are you a yoga teacher? I said, no, I was a dancer, but no, I'm not a yoga teacher. I said, well, you should be a yoga teacher. You have the right energy. You're a natural. I was like, what? Nobody ever said I was natural at anything. Nothing. I mean, if I worked really, really hard, I could be an adequate scientist. If I worked really, really hard, I might be adequate at X, Y, or Z. But something that came naturally that just flowed, never experienced that before. So I was just like, oh, never mind. I was nowhere, in no position to be a yoga teacher at the time. No real thoughts of becoming a yoga teacher. I didn't even really have a yoga practice at all, actually, because that was pretty much my first class. So yeah. So then fast forward to move to California. I didn't do any more yoga after New York City. It was about a year and a half of yoga. Fast forward, we moved to California. I had my daughter, Grace, and then I had my second daughter, Lauren, and I injured my back while lifting up my toddler, holding her out from my body while I had the little baby right up against me and just for my rhomboids. And I don't know what else I did because I honestly never got an orthopedic evaluation. I just healed it through yoga. I tried everything. And then the only thing that ended up making me feel better after about 6 months, I finally went down to this little yoga studio in Pacifica, California called Downward Dog Yoga. And I took an Iyengar class, and they had me up against the wall for alignment, and I had used all the props, and I was just smitten because I felt great afterwards. And it was the first time I had felt, oh, I can do this. I can manage this injury. So it was really a life changer, really and truly. And very different from what I experienced in New York. It wasn't an Iyengar-based class that I had in New York, but it was, but it felt real and it felt like home. And that really made me have to do a yoga practice every day. Without the yoga, I couldn't function. I couldn't lift up my babies. I couldn't, push the stroller. I couldn't do any of the things I needed to do. So that was really great to have that injury, which sounds crazy, but it really changed my life actually. And the yoga really helped with a lot of things. Unfortunately, though, that whole side of like trying to look a certain way and be a certain kind of yoga body was not helpful in terms of, resonating with that ballet experience. And I would say that I fought that, but I'm not sure how successfully I did. I tried to keep it at bay, but I think for a lot of people, the imagery of women's bodies in yoga is not an inclusive one. Um, unfortunately. So, I mean, that seems to be changing a little bit, but very little. Yeah. I'm not a huge, I hardly have any, I'm sort of a very reluctant social media user because I, I don't feel, it's one of those things I work really, really hard to just show up and try to be okay on. It doesn't come naturally to me. I don't know who it does come naturally to, probably not too many of us. But that is an area where if I have too much in my if Instagram feed with yoga, I find I can't handle it. It's like the chosen social imagery around yoga is very often just performative, you know, women's bodies or men's bodies. So that's not what I'm into. So all of that is to say that the injury got me doing yoga. Doing it every day made me have a practice, and having a practice then led me to teach. And that that all stemmed from really that one experience in New York where I had such fond associations with it, and a feeling of belonging and a feeling of ease and flow with it. So that was very lucky.
I'm struck that you came to Iyengar Yoga as a dancer. I think a lot of ex-ballerinas feel very good in Iyengar Yoga classes because it feels so familiar to what we're used to in dance classes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then ironically enough, or not ironically, I suppose the same sort of rebellion happens, right? It was like, oh, ballet, and then you move out and you go like, ooh, I don't have to turn out. I can turn my feet forward. I can, oh, I'm going to break all the ballet rules, and now I'm going to do this kind of dance. And I find that the same thing has happened with me with yoga. It's been very liberating to mix in many other modalities and different ways of doing yoga to open it up, freshen it up, and keep it real. And I've really appreciated having the Iyengar base, and I always cleave to it. But then again, always have that fun of kind of being like, well, yeah, there's that. And then what about this? And it's not this is right and this is wrong. It's what about this? It's really for each person. What about this? Not, oh, you have to do it right. No, and I can't tell you that, the answer, it depends, is such a, I mean, I pretty much could say that to every student every day, 90% of the class, should it be this way? Depends. Um, so it's been a really good, Iyengar Yoga was my anchor, and it is and always will be my anchor, but my rope on the anchor gets longer and longer.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah, one of the best pieces of advice Annie Hoffman gave me, she was my first Iyengar teacher, and she's, now our good friend and colleague, was I was very interested in doing a YTT, and I said, oh, I'm going to go through the Iyengar program. And she said, no, don't do it. And I said, why? And she's like, I don't want you to be locked in a box with it. She's like, I want you to have the freedom. She's like, study all the Iyengar you want, but take a more, I don't know if open format YTT was really what she meant, but don't feel like you have to stick to this one methodology. But much like you, I've cleaved to it, especially when things get a little interesting. Let's say in my body, I have to go back to the basics. But then the freedom and the rebellion, I love the way you said that, the rebellion to go off in other directions and to explore sort of non-Iyengar methodology is just, you have the basics and then you can go play, right?
Yeah. And I find it so interesting because it seems there are many people who want the certainty. And I get that. I mean, when I started the ballet school, part of what was so incredibly helpful to me was the certainty of it and the clarity and the rigor and the how I could really count on every minute of it. And my home life was chaotic, but my ballet life was organized. And I appreciated that and needed that. And I can imagine that for some people, they appreciate and need that in their yoga. And so they want to be given very defined parameters. And that's beautiful. That's fantastic. And they can find that in Iyengar. They can probably find that in a few other styles as well, but especially in Iyengar. I don't find that people who want and need that kind of run out of my classes screaming because I'm really more interested in cultivating a different sensibility, a different relationship to yoga, which is the self-exploration. So it's been an interesting kind of watching, seeing, water rises to its level. People find teachers that they resonate with, and ones that they either did or don't anymore or never did. And, we all find ways through this terrain. And it's always kind of changing.
Absolutely. I love what you said about that self-exploration. Can you speak a little bit about more specifically your journey towards that self-exploration?
Yeah. So in the Iyengar paradigm, based on lots of, as all of us, we bring this whole raft of past life with us into everything we do. And so I brought with me into my Iyengar yoga practice this desire to be seen, to be verified and validated and approved of, and told this is good. And so I worked really hard and pushed really hard. It actually wasn't that great for me at times because I didn't necessarily notice when my body was maybe whispering to me. I couldn't hear it. And so I would push. And early on in my practice, there weren't a lot of teachers saying, pull it back. There was this sort of emphasis on, let's go deeper, which sort of was a cultural ethos at the time. I felt in the yoga world, it was like, and I even had one teacher who would say, that's, in an Ashtanga kind of philosophy of, that's just your body opening. If you feel something that feels a little uncomfortable, don't worry, that's just your body opening. Like, that's a hard one. That's a hard one because yes and no, and yes, maybe, and yes, maybe not. And so I did too much. I pushed too much, and I ended up having to get a hip replacement. I had the repetitive stress of doing 14 years of ballet, plus whatever I did with exigency in my yoga, which I really pushed. I ended up giving myself all kinds of hip conditions. You name it, I had it. And on top of a congenital tendency towards arthritis, I just did too much. And I didn't know. And I do remember now, I disavowed it at the time, but I went to PT at Beth Israel and they said, well, you should avoid end range motion. You should avoid going all the way as far as you can possibly go in any given stretch that you do at the time it was all about stretching. And I remember thinking, that's dumb. I'm not, yoga teacher, blah, blah, and in retrospect, they were completely correct. And the communication wasn't set up in a way that I could hear it. And I didn't have a context for it, and I didn't get it. And the person whom I was seeing was also fairly young-ish, not an experienced person who's seen a lot of yogis come in and get hip replacements, which many of them have now seen. And so, so I just kind of ignored it. Now, not going to end range motion is something I talk about a lot. Like figuring out, so the exploration is, what is your range of movement? What is the range of energy levels you have today? What is the body you have today? What is it like to be you right now? What's this breath like? So that there isn't this felt sense of, I'm always like this. This is what always happens to me. This is what I am or who I am, and this is how my yoga is. It's all fluid. And I thought after my hip replacement, I don't know how it's going to be. During the injury phase, I had a completely locked up hip joint. I could hardly move it at all. After the hip replacement, it took a good 2-3 years to get fully back. And now I'm still like 99.999% back. But so now I find I'm really interested in the middle ground and not pushing too far. And so self-care now becomes exploring, not mandating. And I'm trying to invite my students to explore and try to feel differences, that path versus that path, instead of just pushing the body one way or the other. And that might mean slowing down. It might mean pausing, it might mean stopping, or even not doing something if you're not sure. And so that's really what I've been trying to do in that term, in terms of letting exploration lead the class, lead me, and lead my students. It's trying to back off of the push and come into that it depends space. So.
I love that. I love that. The staying away from the extreme. Can we train ourselves not to grasp for this made up ideal that we have in our head of this, I often think of different forward bends that I've done that there's been days where I'm like, oh, I can go this far. And then part of my brain is telling me, well, you should be able to go that far every day. But that's simply not the case. And I love that and it's something I've always loved about you, you leave this space for curiosity in your classes that's so encouraged of like, there's no perfect, nobody's going to get there. As a matter of fact, you're not who you were 12 minutes ago, never mind right now. You know what I mean? So like, can you give that? And you've always had such a gorgeous way of leading students into that I can only imagine comes from your own desire to find that for yourself.
Yeah, and I've always been a sort of a person at the margins of things, or at the intersection of things. When I was in graduate school, I didn't figure out one lab to join. I joined two labs, and then I did both. When I was an undergraduate, I didn't have one major; I had two majors. And I've always felt I love collage. I've been very drawn to that modality of art, and I love things put together and juxtaposed. And so I think that is a big part of what I'm interested in terms of the student experience, and in my experience is this juxtaposition of right here, right now, with the idea of what this is. Can I let go of that idea and now be right here, right now? And then the juxtaposition becomes this versus that, not ideas, but experiences. So juxtaposing the experience of this. What if I compare this and I compare that, and I don't force either one or say mandate either one, but what if I say, well, let's try this, and then let's try this. Which one do you like? It's being at the optometrist, this or this, this or this. And then they go back and they do this and this, and you're thinking they probably did that one before, and I might have said something different that time, but you don't know. They're the ones doing the click, 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 So it's the same kind of thing, but trying to play with it a little more, and for some people, it doesn't feel like play. There's nothing fun about being injured. There's nothing funny about having injury, but trying to make the movement, set of movements that we're doing, and the strengthening that we're doing, and the rebalancing that we're doing, create this sort of island of stability from which people can launch out and come back, launch out and come back, launch out and come back. Those are some of the current strategies.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like you're really trying to cultivate a sense of safety for them to then do that exploration, for them to then be in that it depends space.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And really invite people to try to drop, let go of, for now, ideas of what it should be like, and the narrative negatives about how you are doing it and how well or how badly, or whether you're good at this or not. I don't really feel like a healing modality doesn't come out of a sort of a negative, sort of negative self-talk is not conducive.
No, it's sort of the opposite.
Yeah, it's like, oh, let's just ratchet up those cortisol levels and everything will hurt.
Well, and then there ends up, when we're reaching for those extremes or those ideals, there ends up being almost like a shame culture around it, because if you can't do it, then you're doing it wrong or something, which is just, I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so easy to see things through the lens of not good enough. And it's really an interesting life challenge to cultivate ways in which that frame or that lens can be moved aside for some period of time.
And that's hard, because we're kind of hardwired from the very beginning, at least societally, to think that there's a way, quote unquote, that we're supposed to either look or act or be. And so for many of us, there's this ingrained conditioning that ends up following us into the dance studio, or especially into the dance studio, but then onto the yoga mat too, where we're like, oh, we got to do yoga right. We got to win at yoga.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm Karen Steffen. I used to love, people would say, well, how do I develop a home practice? And she would say, well, first thing, stand in the space where you're going to be, and then throw your mat on the ground. Just throw it down in a pile. Just start like that. And I love the messiness of it. There's a sort of just, this is not a perfect, this is a practice. This is a mess. Just be a mess on your mat and just lie down and sob on your mat. That's good. Done. Then tomorrow, try something, put it down, do it again and see what happens. Come back to it and come back to it. And honestly, I mean, unfortunately, I find this to be the same, is that unless I'm in pain or unless I know that I will be in pain, it's much harder to get to the mat. And so I like to get out of the driver's seat. I like to go and take a class, and so I don't have to do my own practice at the same time as trying to teach. I find that so wonderful to just say, be like, take me wherever you're going. I might modify, but I'm good here. So I've been really enjoying that in terms of, that self-care question that we're heading towards. I really enjoy getting out of the driver's seat. Whatever that means for people, whether you don't go into the gym and you go for a run outside, or you go to a class, maybe it's a restorative class or whatever it is, change it up, make it somebody else's creativity, somebody else holding space for you. Especially in winter, I find it so wonderful to have that someone else holding the space for me so I can be quiet and I can settle down. Even if it's going to a flow yoga class in a warm studio, which sounds crazy. Some people are like, for me with my vata and my joints, I find that the heat and the humidity is fabulous. And even the pitta, the effort, the tapas and the effort of it all, I find helps my vata ground. I feel more grounded. So again, getting out of the driver's seat.
Yeah, and I can totally see how giving your vata something to focus on that has that level of challenge to it would feel very grounding, because you can't, the joke is, what are you thinking about when you're standing on one foot? Chances are good, not much. Right. And so if you're in one of those, and it's so cool because when I teach balance poses in class, we'll do one side and then we'll get out. And I was like, anybody think about anything while they were in that pose? And everyone looks at me like, no, I didn't think at all, except just don't fall.
Exactly. That's awesome.
It's like, yeah, don't fall. That's all you're thinking about. And in those heated classes, you're like, gotta get through the class. Just gotta make it through the class. And that's all you're thinking. You're not thinking like, oh, did I do this? Did I do that? No, you're in it.
Exactly. And like what level of all it is cultivating my energy and trying to take care of myself in terms of energy and exertion and holding my body in the way that I need to be safe and not push the limits. So it's a constant, you're in a rushing river and the current is strong. And so, you're not thinking about anything else except just moving through.
And so you've kind of built in a little segue here. I heard you think you just said cultivating my own space, my own energy, maintaining that. Is that part of kind of your non-negotiable as far as taking care of yourself?
Yes, absolutely. What I love is that I can go to a class and I can put my mat in the back. I can hide in the corner. I can be wherever. Honestly, I spend so much time with my eyes closed when I'm practicing. They must think I'm the weirdest person ever. But I am there for my practice. I'm not there. I don't look around. I don't even hardly know who's there. If I see some friends, I'll say, of course, say hello. But once we're on our mats and we're practicing, I am not there for anybody but me. Just not, just to be there and to be in that experience of what does this body need today, right here, right now. That's it. And I really appreciate that time. And then even at the end, I love it when the teacher says, if you feel like getting up to sit, great. If you feel like lying down and staying shavasana, great. And I really do honor that. Instead of saying, oh, I should sit up because I really want to say thank you to the teacher, I can say thank you after I leave. I don't have to sit up. I can. And so really giving myself permission to be a total student, not taking care of anybody else. That's part of it. That's a really, as teachers, I'm sure you experience this too, the idea of always needing to take care of other people. You need to have a break from that. And that's a big, huge part of self-care. I think no matter what you do no matter if you're a caretaker type of person or no, I think taking care of yourself, there's got to be some time in the day when that's okay.
Yeah.
Or, ideally. And if you realize you got to the end of the day and that didn't happen, then you don't get to beat yourself up about it, but, find space for it as you can and when you can.
Speaking of taking care of yourself during the day, what are some of your daily practices that you are really committed to that, you wouldn't leave the house without doing it, or you wouldn't think of having a day where it doesn't happen?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, I would say my number one priority in every 24 hours is getting a good sleep as best I can, depending on what has happened and the circumstances. And that has looked different over the years, depending on how I've interpreted my Ayurvedic consulting. Like some of the consultants have said, oh, you could do this, oh, you could do that. So I've done various different things, but I've really appreciated the concept in Ayurveda of figuring out how to get your sleep to be in a certain rhythm. And mine doesn't necessarily look like the perfect Ayurvedic rhythm according to the clock, but according to where we are here in Boston, I feel like I work with it. And that has been hugely helpful. The earlier I can go to bed and the earlier I can get up while maintaining enough sleep, that's my go-to. That is my absolute go-to. Then I always try to have a little time in the morning when I wake up. If I can, I like to have some space and time where I'm not doing job work. I might study at I'm learning Portuguese. I've been learning Portuguese for 5 years now. I might spend some time doing my Portuguese. I might do some creative writing. I might even do a little cooking preparation or something, but I don't do my job right away if I can avoid it. I don't write an email to this or that person. I don't follow up on this schedule or this course description or anything. I try to really spend this, because for me, that first wake up time is the most precious. Quiet. I love it. I try to really look and see the beauty around me when I'm awake in the morning so that I have a felt sense of noticing the beauty around me instead of just going to that problem solving worst case scenario mind. And so it's not a very concrete description of an activity, but I do it every single day. There's that feeling of almost sacredness for that morning space. And I really cultivate that. So sleep and that morning space where I give myself some time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how long does that morning time, is it usually, or does it just depend on the day?
It depends on the day, but I usually have at least 45 minutes to an hour. So I'll get up a little bit early so I have that space before other people are up and interactions begin. And I have that time to kind of go with what moves me. And yeah, that's the time of the day when I think the most clearly. And so following that by my daily meditation, if I can, perfect. Some days that meditation means I go to where I'm going to teach. I sit in a side room and do my meditation in this funny little room. Other times it's sitting here. But the meditation then becomes a part of that self-care. And on the times when I can just simply segue right into it, that's great. But my meditation doesn't always happen in the morning. It often happens in the afternoon or evening. That's one that I would love to have a schedule where it's boom, 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 boom. But that's not how it's been so far. And I don't know. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But so sleep takes precedence. So that's why with meditation, if I need to sleep, I'll sleep, and then I'll fit the meditation in later. And I know that for some people, they feel like they have to just get up and be tired. That hasn't worked for me yet. I'm 59, so we'll see.
I think you'd have a good beat on it by now if it was going to work for you.
Yeah. I've had so many meditation teachers say to me, oh, just you need to be disciplined. You need to get up. Even if you're tired, just be tired. I'm like, my Ayurveda people don't like that. They want me to have a balanced life. So I'm going for that first, and then I'll meditate. Thank you. So.
Yeah, and I always thought, so I don't know about you, but if I try to meditate when I'm tired, I just will fall asleep. So it's kind of pointless anyway.
Yeah, it's unpleasant, uncomfortable, and then you fall asleep. And unpleasant and uncomfortable happen all the time. You don't have to be sleepy for that. But yeah, then the sleep just, yeah. And I actually am not really, I'm not good at falling asleep sitting up. So I'm just like, it's not even good sleep. So
yeah, so you're not getting good sleep. You're not getting good meditation. What's the point?
Exactly. An exploration of life is suffering. Yeah.
Which, yes, and can we have a little more control over it? Oh my goodness. And I feel like I've had meditation teachers tell me that, and this is probably because I come from a very strong Ayurvedic background, it's just they were like, well, if you're falling asleep in meditation, that means you need more sleep, not meditation. So I feel like I've been told that by grown-ups, by people who know these.
Yeah, it's so rational. That's what I love about Ayurveda. It's so practical.
Well, there's a logic to it, and if it's not logical, it's not Ayurveda. Right? We tend to be pragmatists. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes total sense from my experiences as a receiver of Ayurvedic wisdom.
I know, you get it from all angles because you're friends with Larissa Hall Carlson too. So I know you've got it coming in each year. I know. Can't get away from it. It's everywhere. Well, that's not a bad thing, though, I think.
No, it's so great. Yeah, I'm so grateful.
And so let's do a little recap. So sleep is a non-negotiable. Time to yourself in the morning is a non-negotiable. And it sounds like meditation is a non-negotiable, but it happens when it happens.
Exactly. And truthfully, it's a somewhat negotiable because, again, if I get to the end of the day and I haven't been able to do it, I will sit and do a short meditation before I go to sleep. But I find, do I really get that much out of it? I'm not sure. I'm willing to bet there may be some benefit to even a short meditation and I do think I probably sleep a little better. But at that point, just lying in bed and reading sounds a lot better.
I feel like we have a similar meditation practice. I do the same thing. I'm like, I'm going to just breathe for 5 minutes and then I'm going to read.
Exactly.
Ticks the box. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Another non-negotiable is the whole not screens before bed. Like really, really, I have to be super careful about that because I just don't sleep well if I do the whole screen thing close to the time when I'm trying to go to sleep. It's just really not helpful. So that truly is a non-negotiable because otherwise I'm just, oh wait.
Yeah, it's so stimulating. People don't realize.
Yeah. So I still have my phone in the room with me, which for many people is like, why do you do that? Silent, but there.
Well, you have kids and grandbabies and things like that. So that makes sense because God forbid your phone was in another room and you got a call in the middle of the night, that would be heartbreaking. So I completely get that. And if I didn't have an Apple Watch, I'd probably have my phone next to my bed too, just because I've got, older family members. So that makes sense. But
Yeah.
just for people who don't have that, or if there's a way that you can have your phone, say, in the bathroom or something where you'll still be able to hear it, but it's not right next to the bedside table, that can help. Because I know it doesn't sound like you have this problem, but I know so many people have an addiction to the phone because it's such a quick dopamine hit.
Yeah. 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 I would be lying if I said I don't have it. I'm sure I do too. I just like the stupid thing is with me all the time. And I have sort of strategies to manage it, but it's managing an addiction for sure. Um, you know,
Absolutely.
I wish I could say that's not the case, but I think that would be not true. So I'm working on it. Yeah.
We all are. We all are. Because, I mean, man, you get a quick, easy dopamine source. And how are you? You're hardwired for it. Like, we're just human evolution is such that that's what we do. Like, how do you get your amygdala not to do? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how would you get around that when you've got this colorful thing? I have found, though, some people, and I don't know if you've done this, you can put the color filters on your phone so that it's grayscale.
Oh,
And so there are no colors.
that's a great
And
idea.
you can look up how to do it too, so that on my phone, I have it that you click the power button 3 times and this little menu comes up and you can hit the color filter and it turns your whole phone to grayscale.
So that's
It's
fantastic.
so cool because your brain doesn't really care about black and white so much. It's the shiny colors that make it so interesting. And
Oh,
so people listening, or even you, and you can look up how to do it online. You
yeah.
just Google, put iPhone in grayscale and set it for
Yeah.
your thing. And yeah, it
Awesome.
really
I'm
can
going to try
change.
that.
It changes your then. But I find that I'm like, I can handle it for a couple of minutes. And then I'm like, oh, I really miss the colors. Like, I want to see it. I want to see it. Is that funny?
That is, well, I totally get it because yeah, that makes so much sense. Maybe it could be a thing where I could try it for like half the day I do grayscale and half the do I, and or try chunks of the day and see if I can wean myself onto it. I love that. Thank you. I'm gonna definitely try that because
Oh,
yeah, and I
yeah.
could use a little more space between me and my phone.
No. They've made them so useful and to the point where it's like, well, I can't go without it because what if something happens? And then you got to think back that people of our generation, you and me, it's like we remember things before all this was a thing. So we could read maps and make recipes and
Yeah, exactly. And my husband went to China for a year in 1983. He didn't get a letter until 3 months into his trip, and his parents, I think, had to wait at least a month to hear from him from a letter, which had bits redacted, and different world.
yeah,
Yeah,
different world.
yeah, traveling with traveler's checks and not calling my parents and the whole thing.
Exactly. You're in a car and you're driving to another state and no one knows where you are and it doesn't matter. And somehow we all survive. Oh,
Exactly.
isn't it funny?
Yeah.
What are some other ways you take care of yourself? So we've talked a little bit about your non-negotiables, but say you're feeling a little overrun, overwhelmed. What are your go-tos?
So this winter, and this is going to run counter to what is going to be true for many people most likely, but I've always had this narrative in my head that says you have to get outside. And this winter, if I've been feeling like I just want to be inside and be warm, that's what I do. I'm not forcing myself to try to go outside. I do my rigorous physical practice. I get my heart rate up, I sweat, I do my thing. But then if I don't feel like doing, if it feels cold and raw and I feel like I kind of need to hunker down, I've been simply just hunkering down, reading, doing things inside, being warm, putting on a hat, an extra layer, and doing a puzzle. I mean, small, simple, quiet things that in the summer or the spring when the weather's good, push myself outside. But when maybe it has to do with not wanting to enhance vata, but I just have this real feeling that for me to make myself go outside, it doesn't feel right. I can do it. I can put on warm clothes. I can get myself out there. I can do it. And next week I'm going up to the mountains in Quebec and I'm going to be with my husband and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be lovely. But that's not the same as being here in the middle of the afternoon and thinking you should get outside. Oh, but I don't really feel like it. I want a warm cup of tea and I'd rather do something. So I'm trying to stay with that feeling of you know what? Go with that. It's okay. That's been really helpful this winter. It's the first time ever.
What started that, do you think? Or was it just instinct?
I think what started it is I've had family members having some health issues, so it's been super stressful. And so I've been pushed to the limit of what I can handle and still feel okay and still function, but I have no more in me than that. And so that way, I suppose that's it. It's like I got, the end range. It's like, well, I'm all the way up here against the wall, and so that's it. I need to come back, and easier to do that when I know that I need to show up for them. I need to be able to support them and help them and navigate this healthcare system and deal with appointments and things like that. So I need to take care of myself. And I've had past experience of, stressful, traumatic family stuff where I remember my mother saying, you need to take care of yourself. And that's coming back, this feeling of, oh yeah, you can't give somebody some water if your cup is empty.
It's so true. And that hunkering in, that staying cozy, that giving yourself the permission to just do a puzzle, just read a book, not having to push through to go outside or go do another thing. I think that's really wise when you're at the end of your rope or scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, and it feels self-indulgent and sort of, at times the narrative in my head is, oh, this is self-indulgent. You should be doing something. You should be, taking care of your to-do list, blah, blah, blah. But life is short. I really, really feel life is so short. I'm not sure I need to do X, Y, Z. I think I'm okay for an hour right here. So I think that's a part of it, is that end of life considerations have become more important and more realized, and also beginning of life, a new grandbaby coming, but then also health issues. So everything just feels much more, it's not theoretical that this moment is it. It's real that this moment is it. So it becomes easier to rest in the moment.
Mm. That was really well said. I'm struck by that you're in a duality. And there's anticipation in both directions, and it can feel a little wobbly. And for you to be really leaning into stability, so you're applying the opposite. You're being very Ayurvedic about it, and it's beautiful. And you're doing it so instinctually, using all the things that you've learned, and fighting against a pretty loud societal norm of like, oh, but you're not achieving. Like, where's your worth if you're not finishing your to-do list? And you're turning to that and saying to yourself, oh, I'm worthy. I'm worthy enough to take care of. And that's just beautiful and so skillful.
Yeah, I would like to model it so that, for example, I have a 23, almost 24-year-old daughter and a 25-year-old daughter, and I would like them to be able to take care of themselves in a way that was different than what my mother was able to model for me. She really had a very hard time with that. And so, yeah, if I can model self-care for them, that would be huge.
What's some of the advice that you would give them on how to take care of themselves?
I think the first thing that just jumps into my mind when you say that is consider whether you really do need to appear a certain way for this or that person or this or that situation, or whether you can really go with your heart on it. so that instead of looking outward for affirmation, that you can find ways to look inward. I feel like I spent so much of my life looking outward for affirmation for being okay. And if there are things in your life that make you feel secure, confident, grounded, just okay as you are, go that way when you can, or cultivate those things so that you can turn to them when you need them. And you're enough. I think the advice is you are enough. I remember my mother saying, doing your best, that's the best you can do. By definition, that is the best you can do. But somehow it never really landed. I never felt like I was enough. So I'm not sure whether things that I would say to my daughters can actually land, but maybe if I can live it, that might help more. So I guess that would be what I would try to do, is live my advice to them.
And how do you see yourself doing that? Just how you're doing it now, by making sure to listen to that small voice inside that says, stay under the blanket and read a book?
Yeah, and also the voice that says sometimes you do the right thing and it feels bad. Sometimes you do the right thing and it's not comfortable. Sometimes moving in the direction of something that seems scary is still the right direction. Mm-hmm. And knowing that you're strong enough to get through it, you can be with it more than you think. I think that I've always been afraid that, for example, conflict or working through a difficult conversation with someone, oh my God, what if it goes badly? What if they don't? Da da da. More like, okay, turn towards the thing. Then instead of pushing something away, can I turn towards it with curiosity and stay and not run away? Doesn't mean I have to go reach for it or embrace it necessarily, but turn towards it with curiosity so that I'm not creating a scab or a scar that just shuts me off from the world, but being willing to stay with something that may not be super comfortable, feel it, experience it, and then decide, not for me. Or, oh, guess what? It just changed. I wish I could convey, especially to one of my daughters, that you can do this. This feels hard, but you can do it. Actually, to both, everyone in my family. This feels hard, but I know you can do it.
What I'm so what's bubbling up for me is I've just been listening to these interviews that Martha Beck is giving. And Martha Beck she's a life coach, and she talked about how she had this near-death experience, whatever, and she came out of it, and she found that her way was just radical honesty. Tell the truth, live the truth, no matter what. And when I hear what you're saying, what it sounds like to me is that you're saying, and it, these buzzwords get tossed about, but like, you're advocating for standing into your truth no matter what it feels like. So really leaning into your own authenticity, even if it feels yucky sometimes, because it's not either what someone else wants you to do or what you feel like society is wanting you to do, or whatever it is. Just being radically honest with yourself and being confident in yourself enough that you're okay with it, even if it does feel gross. Is that right?
Yeah, and I would say the confidence is the confidence in the practice of staying with. I don't even have to actually ask for self-confidence, because I may not feel like I have it. And I may, or I may not on a given day, but my confidence or my faith or my trust is in the practice of staying with it. And what happens when I do, as compared to the practice of what I really want to do, which is to run away. And if I stay, like in meditation again and again, that's just one of our modalities, and you practice them all the time, of in the yoga and in meditation, whatever other practices you have, of staying with and cultivating this ability to be with, as you're saying, your truth, with what's really happening, with what's actually here right now. And sometimes all it is just this feeling in my gut, and I can't articulate it any more than that. And to say, I don't know, I'm just sitting here feeling this kind of, ugh. And that might be my meditation, and I might be watching it and feeling it and listening and watch and notice, oh, it's actually decreasing, or you know what, I feel so angry, or whatever it is, to be able to be with the truth of the moment. And it sort of makes it the truth of the moment. It doesn't have to be my moment. It doesn't have to be even me. It's being with the truth of the moment even can make it a little more spacious. So I'm a little bit less bound to do it right if it's the moment instead of my moment. I'm living through it and into it and trying to be with it as best I can. And then it changes. Oh, okay.
Right? The only consistent thing is change. And much like the weather in New England, wait a moment.
Yeah.
It's going to shift no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that in terms of self-care, the thing that has helped me the most is meditation added to the yoga. And it could be meditation added to anything. But for me, it was yoga was really helpful. It got me so far into healing and self-care. But I needed the extra piece of meditation where I have a teacher who knows me and I can talk about my practice, and there's a group setting that we meditate together and retreats. And for me, that's a modality that has really worked and helped me tremendously move into being able to be with the stuff that feels hard and to be more real about what I'm experiencing, and a little bit less wanting to always run away and avoid things that feel not pleasant or uncomfortable.
Or challenging, right? Things that
Yeah,
feel
in
like
any way.
in any way, exactly.
Yeah. Like, oh, this isn't easy. I don't like it.
I don't like it. Yeah. And it's good to have a teacher that's like, but you still have to look at your bullshit, like
Exactly. Like you're on retreat and you're sitting and they're like, yeah, we're just going to sit, and then we're going to do a walking meditation. Then we're going to do a sitting meditation. Then we're going to do a walking meditation. Have fun.
and internally your eyes are rolling. You're like, oh God, if I have to do it one more time, I'm gonna die.
Exactly. Or when are they going to ring the bell? They must have forgotten to ring the bell. Nobody's ringing the bell.
That's so funny. I always think, I'm like, especially if I'm meditating, I use my phone as my timer, and I'll be like, oh, why isn't the timer gone off yet? My phone must be broken. Obviously, my phone is broken. It's never broken. Just
No.
spoiler alert. Not
right,
ever.
yeah.
Not once.
It's so true. Mine either. I can't tell you how many times I thought it was broken. And then you look at it, you're like, yeah.
Yep, that face is the same face. That's the universal. Oh, I just need to sit in my damn meditation for another damn 20 minutes. And it's only, and it's like, that's the work.
Exactly. And then it's like, well, is it really worth it? Should I just get up now? I've already broken my meditation, like, is it?
There's only 15 minutes left in my 30-minute meditation. Stay there, woman. Stay. No, but the cat just meowed. I gotta go.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I'm going to do feeding the cat meditation. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Sure you are.
Yeah. I'm going to do driving to the yoga studio meditation because I putzed around and didn't sit my butt on the cushion, and now I didn't meditate yet today. So.
It's so funny. So it's that you speak of something that's so universal. It's just the figuring out how to be consistent with our practices, whatever it is. Getting up on time, scraping the tongue, drinking the warm water, doing the meditation, doing some form of exercise. And then the consistency, like you're practicing this winter, of listening to the self.
Yeah.
Right. Not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah. And listening to yourself so you can be more present for others. If you need inspiration, it certainly helps. It doesn't mean I don't completely blow it and say the wrong thing and do stupid things. And But I do find it's, as my meditation teacher often says, it's easier to clean up afterwards. It's easier to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I really, I did that thing, and I'm really sorry." Or,
Yeah.
"Wow." Yeah.
Yeah. That's been my thing lately of like all this practice and I still do the stupid thing or I blow up in a stupid way and then I have to be like, oh my gosh. But I think what it is because you practice, your lens is a little clearer and you're more able to see. And hopefully you see it faster. Like sometimes you ever do this, you see it while it's happening. And you're like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
I can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. Ah, watched it all squirt out. Damn it.
That's a great image. Yes, absolutely. Like, oh, yeah,
It's like
yeah,
instead of gently squeezing the tube, you like slapped it and all the toothpaste went flying, but you like saw yourself doing it, but you were like powerless to stop the action. It's like, oh gosh, toothpaste everywhere. Yikes.
yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So,
So I'm curious, what if someone was just starting out? So if someone came to you and they said, Anne, you're a yoga teacher, you're a meditator, you've been doing this for decades now. Oh, I'm just starting out. What would be some advice that you would give to someone just starting out on their journey towards taking care of themselves?
mm, I would say give yourself options. Um, keep giving yourself options so that you can find, if it's not one modality, choose a different one. That if you'd like to do self-care and you're not sure what that looks like, have a few things that you can do so that even if you're a person who loves consistency and like I'm the kind of person who likes to eat the same breakfast every day, that kind of thing, you know, then build something that feels right that you can do consistently. But if you're finding that it's challenging to do that, have a few ways to satisfy that need for self-care and let them be pretty different and see if you can choose one every day or every other day. And then to I think it's often really helpful for me to be very clear on the consequences of not self-care, of not doing self-care. For me, unfortunately, that is how I've been more able to be consistent in my physical yoga practice, is knowing what happens when I don't do it. And I really do have to keep practicing because otherwise my musculoskeleton is whacked out. And so I need to stay on top of that. And if I do, then I start to get to a point where I build strength. So I guess keeping an eye out for patterns for yourself in your life where you feel like, when I get a beat on this, there's more ease. It's once I get going on that, I can keep going on that. Then really learn that. I would say use your time to learn where you need to go for self-care and let that momentum, find places where there's some momentum so it isn't just you know shoving yourself into it every day, but it's more like, hey, I want to do that. So because I mean I came to it because of injury, so I'm not recommending that. That sucked, but it did mean that I had to do it every day, otherwise it didn't feel good. So maybe dropping into how you're really feeling, figuring out, okay, so it's really hard to give advice to people on how to be consistent when my only way of doing it was having been injured. Yeah, that's a challenge.
That's all good advice, though. So have some options and see where the interest lies, and then try to keep showing up to at least one thing every day, and then look and feel where the momentum feels like it's gaining some momentum, right? Where you're
Yeah,
gaining some momentum.
yeah, it pulls you along a little bit. And then also being willing to look at things and say, am I doing this because I want to, or am I doing it because I think it's a good thing, that I've been told it's a good thing to do? Where's the narrative coming from, or where's the impetus coming from? For some of us, we really feel like our body has to move every day or we feel like crap. for other people, it doesn't happen that way. You don't necessarily feel bad if you don't move. So then there needs to be another way of inspiring it or figuring out of strategies. Like maybe you go for a walk with a friend because you can talk to your friend when you're doing it and find someone to do that with, so that you use other things that bring you to a strategy that are meaningful to you. Yeah.
I like getting accountability buddies into the jam. Right.
Yeah, it can be so helpful. And when you're feeling like, and you know you'll feel better if you do it, and then if they're waiting for you.
Exactly. Well, I think that's why, and I don't know if you feel this way, but like I like to take classes with my teachers every week. Like I take a class, I'm down to 2 classes a week. That's all my schedule will allow for at the moment. But like clockwork, every Tuesday morning, every Thursday morning, I'm in class because I know if I don't show up, either Annie or Joseph Satlak's going to be like, where are you? Right?
Yeah.
Like, why
Yeah.
aren't you here? And
Yeah.
I know it can, to have that accountability. And that's another, I think, tip for our audience is like having some kind, if there is, so you figured out your narrative, you know the why you're doing whatever it is. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Then figuring out so how do I build that in so that I have some kind of accountability, especially if I know I tend to be inconsistent.
Yeah.
And maybe that's knowing that your teacher, especially in a yoga community, we tend to build these communities. So I know you notice when a student's not there. I notice when a student's not there. And I'll often,
Yeah.
if it's someone who's consistent, I'll reach out and be like, are you okay? And I'm not guilting them or
Yeah.
anything. I'm
No.
just genuinely want to make sure like you didn't show up and you always do, or you are right. But I
Yeah.
think on the other hand of that, the student feels seen and they get that momentum, like you were speaking of
Yeah.
like, I have to show up because my teacher's going to wonder, and I need to show up for me, but I also need to show up in a way to respect my teacher and the space that they're giving us.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
then it becomes effortless because that momentum is carrying you and you're not trying to just force it all the way from first principles. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's true for meditation too. I mean, one of the places that I get so much benefit from is my meditation sangha group. I mean, it's one in person and one on Zoom, and everyone's expecting everyone to be there. And when you're not there, people really wonder and they worry, and so you show up because it's nice to actually have people notice that you're there and they really care that you are. So that's another nice thing about building in, like you say, accountability and community-based activities that you feel good about, that make you feel good. Yeah.
You just touched on another aspect of taking care of the self, and that is the sangha, the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my meditation teacher always says that when the Buddha talked about the 3 gems, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, he always talked about Sangha as being the most important of the 3. And yeah, because we're humans on the planet, and without community.
Yeah, actually, I was just listening to a podcast about this. There's that. It used to be called the the Harvard Men's Study, and then they've changed the title of it to because now it's something like 1,700 people, and it's all different genders, and it's this group of people they've studied. You must know about this for the last like 87 years or something. And they studied all different aspects of it, but one of the bigger aspects they've been studying is happiness, because they've actually been able to watch people in real time and look at the factors that were responsible for their happiness. And the biggest one is relationship, is community.
That tracks.
Like,
That's so
yeah,
completely.
right?
Yeah.
And so that, I mean, I think we could both agree that like if I had someone starting out and they're like, I feel like crap and I really want to take care of myself, it'd be like, well, look at your relationships. Like, do you have people that like, I listen to a lot of Mel Robbins, but she said, make a list of the warm relationships and the cold relationships. The warm relationships are the ones that when you think about them, you get all warm and fuzzy, which is how I feel about Ann Curtis, ladies and gentlemen. And then she's like, make a list of the people who make you feel cold, like where they just suck the life out of you. And try to spend more time with the people that make you feel warm and fuzzy. I mean, which
Yes.
seems so logical, but we don't always think of it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even just, teaching this morning, people walk in and say hi to each other. Everyone's chat, 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 chat before class. I love it. When I have to ring the bell to start class, I'm thrilled because everyone is there with each other talking. And that's a huge part of what the yoga class is. My teacher, Larry Hatlett in San Francisco or in Palo Alto, where that was my first teacher training. And he studied with Iyengar in Europe for many years with Karen Steffen, actually. And so she sent me to him when I moved out here back from Berkeley or from San Francisco Bay Area. And Iyengar, unfortunately, I don't know what it was happened, but Larry went to a thing where he was there for 3 days and Iyengar never looked at him or spoke to him the whole time. Don't know. And Larry just said, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm done because why, what is that? So that was the anecdote. So it's very one-sided. But the point is that his whole thing was connecting. Like you'd be upside down in Prasarita Padottanasana, and he'd walk over and he'd hang upside down and he'd go, how you doing? In a nice quiet voice, just to you, and then he'd go up to somebody else and then he'd tell a joke out loud and then someone else would tell a joke. And the whole class was about being seen. And he was also, by the way, an exquisite teacher. He was beautiful practitioner and a fantastic pedagogue. I mean, he was such a good teacher and very, very classical Iyengar, like really, really beautiful without any of the, sometimes I think Americans, we bring back this sort of way of thinking we have to be, maybe in Ayurveda this happens too, I don't know, but, in the yoga world, there can be some people who seem to think that they have to put on a certain way of being. Larry was always just Larry, and he always wanted to make sure every single person in the room felt seen and heard and respected. And there was sort of joy and silliness and bad jokes and things going on all the time. There was even a woman from Yoga Journal who said, yeah, she said, I travel all around the country. I take Larry's class whenever I can. His is the loudest class I've ever been in. His people are all, she goes, it drives me crazy, but it's really fun.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but that connection, that really was Larry's vibe, and I really value that.
That connection, it's so important. It's such a pillar of our health, I think. And
Yeah.
the older I get, the more I see that is that we really have to cultivate these relationships, and it's not always easy. Sometimes they take work. And I'm embarrassed to say, I think you and I haven't actually spoken in person in a couple of years, just because life happens. But I think what's cool is when you cultivate these relationships, that it can be very much like you pick up the phone and it's like you never left, and we have that openness because for many reasons, but I think the practice is part of that. It's just this like part of the practice of meditation, yoga, and mindfulness is just allowing whatever is to be without judging it in any way. And I think part of building these relationships is allowing for that. Like, you have to kind of let people do what they're doing and let yourself show up the way you're going to show up, and then try to be really honest and true back to your authenticity of where you're at and what's happening. And I think that's a neat practice to pull through, because then there isn't any, I never think for a moment what anybody else is thinking of me, because I show up every day as an authentic person, and I know you do too. And so there's never any of that, there's never any cattiness or hurt feelings or anything, because I know with you, and I know with all my friends, that if anybody felt a certain way, they would just call me, because they're true to their authentic self, which is a call back to what you were saying earlier about that you would give to your daughters, is that like, be your authentic self no matter what, because not only will you live a happier life, but then you don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah. 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 It's absolutely, it's too complicated to try to maintain barriers and boundaries. And it's all of a sudden you're in a maze of constructed ideas about how you should be or what you should say and all sorts, instead of just being like, yeah, it was a rough time. I was going through a rough time. How are you? You know, basically COVID happened, that's, I think, when we were last living in the same area, we were managing the beginning of COVID. Oh my God.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah.
And then everyone split to the winds, right? People just either hunkered down or like Kevin and I, we ran away. We were like, we're going to the country. We're taking it.
Wonderful.
We're going to go live our dream.
And that's wonderful to turn something like that into an opportunity. That's so great.
It's what we had to do, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a tradition here on the How to Take Care of Yourself podcast where I ask a final question. It's the same question for all guests.
Okay.
And the question is, what have you learned from the food that you eat? And that could be presently, like what you're learning from the food you're eating currently. It could be some lesson you learned. Could be anything.
Wow. What have I learned from the food that I eat? I've learned that being more broad about it, having more different types of, like, do I eat dairy? A little bit. Do I eat meat? Very little, hardly any, but a little bit. Fish. Do I eat? And can I try that? And should I try that? Well, if it's industrial, okay, maybe not. But like all the other foods that are whole, I'm just trying to like let everything float in this current paradigm of eating where I don't restrict myself, because honestly, I haven't found that the restrictions I tried doing 2 months of vegan, gluten-free, no soy last year, did I feel really that much better at the end of that than I did, 2 months later? No, I didn't. So I really have noticed that it matters if I'm attentive to the time of day when I eat and the time between meals. That makes more of a difference and the wholeness of the food, the lack of industrial chemical / production that goes into it. As long as those things are met, things are whole and as unproduced as possible, then a wide variety seems to sit well with me, seems to create balance. And I'm surprised by that, because I've always been, for all the way back from when I was starving myself to try to be an ectomorph, I would try to restrict, and I don't eat that, and since I'm lucky enough not to have any allergies that I'm aware of to food, I'm able to sample little bits of all sorts of different things, and I'm finding that balance feels whole and balancing. So.
That was a really good answer. No, I liked that a lot. That was very encompassing of many different avenues. I think that answer is very helpful to hear, because we are kind of living in a time where people think the answers to their own woes is that restriction. And I love that, no, it's not about restriction, it's about wholesomeness and timing.
Yeah. Yeah, if your body can handle it. I mean, like, I have family members who can't, and I'm not saying, oh, there's something wrong with you. No, they respect it and they work with it, and I work with them, and we honor what they need to do, because it's very clear. You put that in your body says no. I'm lucky, super lucky, that I don't have so far anything that has evinced that reaction in me. So, yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's exactly, there are people, one of my best friends, she eats wheat or soy, that's all, it's over, right? It's almost like an anaphylactic reaction. She can't do it. And so I'm never going to do that to them. But we have people like yourself who have no allergies, and they go into the food world, and I see this a lot, which is too bad. And they think, like, if they, if they start eating gluten-free, somehow it's going to change, it's going to fix everything, right? So it like sort of becomes their personality, and then they're like, but it's fixed nothing. And, it was good to hear you talk about broadly eating, because I get, there's that famous Jimmy Kimmel bit where, or I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, don't come at me, Jimmy, but where he sent like a man in the street out when becoming gluten-free was a trend, because unfortunately for all the celiacs in the world, becoming gluten-free was a trend for a while. And he sent someone out, and the guy was just going up to people, are you gluten-free? And they'd say with this pride on their face, oh yeah, I'm gluten-free. Do you know what gluten is? And there'd just be crickets, because they didn't know. And I was like, so why are you gluten-free? It's like, oh, okay. All right. Cool. Like vegetarian, I get. Like vegan, all right. But if you're gluten-free and you don't know what gluten is, Houston, we have a problem.
Exactly. Oh, that's awesome.
Gosh.
Yeah.
It's too funny. And don't gluten-free people, if you're actually gluten-free because you have intolerances, please, I'm so sorry that's happening to you, because bread is a beautiful thing. But if you don't know what gluten is.
Yeah, I make a lot of gluten-free bread for family members who are gluten-free and who cannot eat it, and it's so hard to make it. It's hard to make good gluten-free bread.
Oh, I'll have to send you
without eggs.
Never mind. I was like, I have
know,
a recipe.
Right? Gluten-free, great. No eggs, not great. It's okay. One can do. I do sourdough and I do non-sourdough, and it's manageable. But if only.
Oh yeah. I know.
That's okay.
It's a whole thing. It's a labor of love, is what we call it.
It is, and I do love it. It is, being able to meet somebody who has a food restriction with something that is an approximation of what they would really want, and that you really tried hard to make for them. That's pure love right there. So.
And in that way, you're helping other people take care of themselves.
Exactly. Honoring what they need to do for their body, whether it's convenient for me or no.
Yeah. So, Anne, where can people find you?
So they can find me on my website. That's probably the easiest. It's yogawithin.studio. So instead of .com, I don't know how I got this. I don't know. But anyway, that's my website, www.yogawithin.studio. And that's probably the best place, because then you can go to my Instagram from there, and you can message me directly from there.
Fantastic. And I'll link to all of that in the show notes. And you teach weekly classes that are open to the public in Arlington and also on Zoom, yeah?
Yes, they're both hybrid. All three are hybrid. A very beginning level class, and then 2 all levels classes in the morning on Wednesdays and Fridays, Monday midday, a noontime class, very gentle. And then I teach workshops and retreats. My next retreat is in May in Tuscany. And then following that, there's one in October in Vermont. That's a new one for me. So.
Are there spaces open in May? No.
May is sold out, but May of 2026 is going to open up soon. Yeah. So,
cool.
Yeah. The Tuscany one is really a joy. It'll be year 4. Year 4? Yeah. This will be year 4 for me to be going there. So I'm very excited.
That's amazing. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for doing the work that you do, Anne, and continuing to show up for people. It's just, you're an inspiration. You really are.
Thank you. Well, you too, all the amazing work you're doing too. I see all your recipes and all your enthusiasm, your bright energy. It's great. I really appreciate it. No, I love your new logo too, by the way. Oh, it's really cool. It may not be that new, but it's super cool. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah. My friend Janelle is a graphic designer, and she made it for
really
us.
Cool.
And yeah, thanks. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you, and I'm already looking forward to the next time.
Yes, me too. Thank you, Veronica. Thanks for having me. And be well.
Thank you.
Okay.
You too.
Bye.
Wow. Wasn't that great? Anne is such a delight, and I love her perspective on self-care as a process of exploration rather than just an end goal. There's something very freeing about the idea that we don't have to get everything right. We just have to keep showing up and paying attention. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You could leave a comment below or send me an email. Share your takeaways with me on Instagram at @the_Veronica_Wolff-Casey. And don't forget to check out Anne's work at yogawithin.studio. Again, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe and you won't miss anything that way. And it tells the algorithm and me that you want more of this type of content. If you're feeling generous, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps us to get this podcast out to more people who need it. Okay? Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, if no one's told you yet today, I love you and I am convinced of your capacity to continue crafting a life worth living. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.